66% of entrepreneurs will never start a business because they're too scared of failing. How do you give yourself the highest likelihood of succeeding in a business? You follow the data. In this video, we're going to break down for you. The business is with the highest failure rate and the lowest failure rate. So you can pick one, where you can win gyms, not one of my favorite businesses. You want to know why 80% of them fail within the first year? 81% to be precise. Now, the cool part about gyms is you typically don't need all of this. You don't need a giant building. You don't need a huge location that's prime. You could have a little CrossFit gym with a box and start it with a couple $100K and some friends, which is what a lot of people do. Here's the problem with gym businesses. Typically, the owners start a gym business as a hobby, right? They like to work out, so they want to put their name on the building, and that's what they do, which means that they neglect the finances. They don't have a marketing plan. They do things custom. They don't have standard pricing. They don't have third-party products that they take a cut on and sell, and they don't do high margin, which is things like subscriptions and also personalized training at a really expensive level. One of the secrets to wealth in general is if you want to get rich, sell things to rich people because they pay more. Gyms are a really hard business to do that. Now there are models that work. Gold's been around forever. It's a franchise, and there's basically two ways you can do a gym. You can have a Gold's Gym, and you can have a Planet Fitness where they kind of expect you to subscribe and then really never come. Or you can have an Equinox, or they expect you to come, but you're going to pay for it. That's the difference between like $10 a month and $200 or $300 a month regardless. I think just go get SW when you go to the gym. And if you want to make your bank account SW, pick another business, ATMs. I get pitched this business all the time because it seems easy and like it might not take that much money. The other reason is, let's think about it this way. If anybody got cash on them in this group, I know the answer to that, and that's no. Except maybe Samuel, but most people these days are not carrying cash around, so we're having a declining user base with really tiny margins and a lot of logistics. Tough business. The second way that people make money on ATMs is, they charge a surcharge, right? So you take a percentage of the transaction costs, 1 to 2 to 5%, and then you might add a surcharge, which is like $2 to $5 per transaction. So that is where you could make your meatier transaction. But again, if you're only doing 3 to 5 transactions today at a normal location, that's not going to be enough. Now, how could this business work if you're outside of a cannabis store where they will only take cash? This could work if you're outside of a bar where they require a ton of cash. This business could work, but then you're going to have to pay more for rent on that location. Also, here's the thing. At the end of the day, I think you need 50 to 100 ATMs to make enough profit for it to be worthwhile as a full-time gig. If you want to have a little side hustle, you want to learn the game of business, you want to learn your P&, you want to start small? Somebody else can fund you, or you can lease the ATMs, then we're good to go. Why I would never buy a dry cleaning business. Or why Cody Sanchez hates dry cleaners. Let me tell you 2 reasons. The first one is, look at this graph. We've basically seen the number of establishments plunge, meaning people are using them a lot less. Probably has to do with the fact that suits are going out, more people are working from remote, and less things that need to be dry cleaned are part of our everyday life. The second reason is one word, and it's called remediation. So if you go on the internet right now, you'll see like hundreds of dry cleaners selling for $100,000 to $200,000, and you can often sell or finance them. So why wouldn't I like those? It's because I was looking up the math for you guys. If you use a dry cleaner the old way, there can be a lot of toxicity right here underneath our feet. That needs to be cleaned up by whoever owns the business. It's called remediation. How much does that cost? Is fascinating. The EPA right now thinks that 75% of the dry cleaners in the US are contaminated. The soil underneath them is, and that they have 650 gallons of hazardous waste that they need to clean up. But how much does the hazardous waste cleanup cost anywhere from? It could be $5 to hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on how deep it is and in what state, city, etc. I don't want to buy a business that's only making $100,000 or $200,000 or run one that's only making that much. And then I gotta pay for somebody to come clean up all this toxicity. Plus, aren't we all green these days? This is not where we're going. So anyway, thank you to dry cleaners that exist, but also be careful about what's underneath your feet. Hotels, these are not businesses, this is real estate, masquerading that as a business. Let me tell you why the data says these businesses are really tough. Look at these margin numbers. So, on average, you make $94,000 a year, but the average expense for a hotel is $96,000 a year, so they're losing 2%. Why is that? Okay? Because they use the real estate depreciation, kind of a fancy word to say that they use the ability to decrease their taxes, in order for these things to become actually profitable. So they're not even profitable unless you're messing around with the IRS also. I don't know about you, but I don't want to have a business where somebody can call me at 2 in the morning and yell at me and expect service right away, 24/7. Support is what you have when you have a hotel business. There's enough going wrong in business for you to wake up at 8, have a cup of coffee, and then deal with it. I think that's efficient. The other thing is, this is a complex business because you see, we're at one right now, and if you were to look around, you'd basically see a bunch of people behind me are doing landscaping, right? A bunch of people behind me are redoing the bar over here. It's complex. It requires 24/7 support and a ton of humans to run this business. Not to mention, look at what's happening to this industry. So back in the day, there were 20 major hotel companies in the 2000s. Now there are only 10, so we've consolidated the industry, and those 10 own 65% of the market. So if you want to get into hotels and be independent like this lady is, she's a legend into hotels, by the way. It's really hard, and so you have to end up going franchising. Most 67% of all hotels are franchised hotels. Here's the problem with that. They take a ton of your revenue, and they leave you with something like 2 to 7% total revenue at the end for you to run the business. Since these contracts run 10 to 15 years on average, you better make sure the PEP franchise is one you want to stick with for a while. This hotel's amazing. The grounds are beautiful, but the problem with a hotel like this is, can you imagine what it costs to run this thing non-stop? Sorry, you guys got permission to go in. I think we've been kicked out of 17 businesses now. Amazon, FBA, the other type of business that is my least favorite of all of them. Let me tell you why. Although I have a bunch of friends that made money and you have all these young YouTubers all over the internet telling you how much money you can make doing Fulfilled by Amazon and how easy it is and how seamless it is. The truth of the matter is, the math doesn't math one, because if there is one platform that has more risk to one being your biggest competitor, which Amazon does, 2, allowing a bunch of Chinese knockoffs to come compete with you, and 3, actually giving your data to both your competitors and then taking your data about what sells and using it for their own. It's Amazon's huge platform risk. The second reason why I don't like Fulfilled by Amazon businesses is you actually can't touch your customers. How wild is that? You buy from my store on Amazon, and I send your house my product pens. Let's say I cannot get your contact information or your address, and oh, by the way, I'm not even allowed to put something in the packaging that asks for you to write a review, or that asks for you to get more information. No mathematician, but that don't look good. Restaurants, really tough business to win in. Actually, one of my least favorite ones, as evidenced by one, failed right behind us right now. Look at all of this real estate that is now empty and how expensive it had to be to get started. The average small business in the US sells for somewhere around $800,000, but the average restaurant sells for $198,000. Why? Because they're really hard to win at over the long term. In fact, I was looking up some stats for you guys. 60% fail in year 1, 80% in 4 years. Huge competition. In fact, scroll down this street to see what they're working with. We've got Juiceland, we've got Chipotle, we've got something at the end. We've got a Hop Dottie over here, and we've got 3 more restaurants right next to them. So why do restaurants fail? Lots of reasons. One is they run out of cash because they don't have enough money up front. The average build of a restaurant's anywhere from $200,000 to $1 million to build out. That's a lot of won. That's why I wouldn't do this business, even though apparently it's kind of hard to fail. If people need a place to live no matter what, also cool stat 9.18 billion is the size of this industry in 2022, and it's growing at like 6 to 7%, which is wild. So if you have a harder stone and you like to take care of grandma, this might be the business for you. If real estate rental properties in particular, Andrew Carnegie famously said, 90% of all millionaires got there through some form of real estate. Now, 90% of all billionaires didn't, but if you're going for your first million rental properties are a great way to incrementally do it, also using a bunch of tax advantages. Let me give you a few reasons why in some of the stats on this business. 1, the success rate on real estate's crazy high, 85.3% on rental properties. That means that they don't go defunct or bankrupt as often. 44 million Americans are home renters, so there's a huge captured market, and actually that market is increasing today. And so there's actually big margin if you can understand the logistics of that business. Also, if you want to be a total stud on how to do it, you can use a company like Sense, which is a technology company. I own part of this company, by the way, that allows you to make everything to do with laundromats a lot easier. Owning laundromats isn't all sunshine and rainbows. I've owned these before. So what you really need to think about is who your customer is. Because sometimes you got meth addict outside. You also have to think about how many people are you going to have on staff. You don't make that much money in it then if you want to have a bunch of employees. So it's really nice if you can add a bunch of technology that allows you to monitor the building, to collect cash, to dispense soap without any humans around. This is something that most new owners come in and do, and a laundromat like this definitely has that. And the last thing is these laundromat machines. Or like buying a Honda Civic, they're like $10,000 to $30,000 each. So this part ain't cheap, but it's a 92% success rate, so they last for a while. Now you get to pick businesses with a high likelihood to fail or ones with a high likelihood to succeed, but it's more than you just picking winners and losers. We're here on Main Street, and like the sign says, I love. A street like this in Austin, Texas, full of small businesses that decide to give their lives serving us with something. You get to walk into an ice cream shop where people are up at 5 in the morning to make you and your family a little something, and there's magic in that. That happens in everyday communities by humans just like you who decide to do the hard thing, which is to actually build instead of just consume. So at this channel, we are about making Main Street millionaires. You should subscribe if you want to be one, but you should also subscribe if you want to see a Main Street like this.